Let's be honest. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about Russia? Let us guess. Are we correct? In this video, we will try to represent Russia to you from the perspective of native residents of this beautiful country. We will reflect on our childhood, our background, and what it was like growing up in Russia for us. Later, our present life and professional experiences will be analyzed and compared to relevant academic theories related to cultural diversity. Furthermore, we will attempt to come up with a strategy that addresses intercultural challenges in the workplace, which will be necessary for our future career. Throughout this video, common stereotypes will be either approved or rejected, and hopefully you will learn something new and interesting about Russia, its culture and people. Let's start.
It happened that all three of us were born and raised in Russia, in Siberia, and therefore our childhood was similar due to the same circumstances and conditions. Siberia on its own comprises 73% of the Russian territory. In order to feel its size, let's take Switzerland as an example. Believe it or not, you can fit 305 Switzerlands into Siberia. It is industrially developed, has rich infrastructure and multiple opportunities for local and foreign investments and businesses. We were born in the early 90s, right after the Soviet Union has collapsed. Due to this event, our parents were extremely confused and lost, and they had to find a way to upbring and educate children adapted to the requirements that new society had. The values have changed, because from being communistic the country turned into democratic. However, it took time to adapt to such change. According to Hofstede cultural dimension theory, Russia is a highly collectivistic culture, which has greatly affected us as children in different ways. We inherited the values and beliefs from our grandparents, parents and school teachers who were raised in USSR.
Since our early childhood, our parents would always teach us that it is important to listen and respect the teachers and parents, our social environment, as well as the nature around us. We were taught that we are not the center of the world, because if you care about yourself only, people will perceive you as an egoist and an arrogant person. This is what was described by Trompinar's 7 dimensions of culture theory as an attitude to the environment. In addition to this, as a high-context culture described by Hall, we, as little Russians, used to gather the whole neighborhood to play outside, which shows the strong affiliation with the community, and moreover, the family has always been a #1 priority. Looking at how we, as kids, interacted with older people, it was always clear that older had more authority in making decisions, and it was always accepted by us. In kindergarten, schools, extracurricular activities, hierarchy was strictly defined and everyone knew the limit of one's authority. Schwartz explained the social structure as hierarchy and compares it to egalitarianism, where equality value is the most important. Overall, we believe that the values that we grew up with in Russia had a significant impact on who we are today. However, our generation is still different from the previous ones because we had more opportunities to travel, to learn other cultures, to easily access the information through the development of the internet, and fortunately, our parents gave us the opportunity to study in an international university in Switzerland.
Stereotype 1. It's always cold in Russia. Well, the average summer temperature in our Siberian hometowns is 23, well, plus 23 degrees of course, which is perfectly enjoyable sunbathing level.
When I found out that I'm going to the university in Switzerland, some stereotypes came across my mind. The Alps, chocolate, cheese, watches and cows. The first week was an absolute cultural shock for me. Of course, I have traveled before, but have never been in the same place in the same time with more than 40 different nationalities from all over the world. Day by day I discovered that we are all so different, and in order to comfortably and successfully work together as a team, we need to learn and adapt to one another. Despite the fact that most of my time I spend at school, I also communicate with local Swiss people, whose culture is different from the one I come from. As a low-context country, described in Hall's theory, the perception of time differs in Switzerland compared to Russia. For example, if I schedule the appointment with the doctor here, the time is precise and should be respected. While in Russia, the live queue system is still commonly practiced in hospitals. Moreover, I noticed that we are different with the Swiss in the way people interact to each other. Explained by Hall as an interaction, in high-context cultures such as Russian, we use many gestures, facial expression and other non-verbal elements. On the contrary, Swiss people have a low use of such elements and carry the message mostly by words. Since I'm residing in a foreign culture environment, I understood the importance of respecting the way local people live, behave and communicate.
It happened that all three of us had one of the internships in the same property in the beautiful Russian city of St. Petersburg. From the view of an employee, we decided to compare what is said by Hofstede about the high power distance in Russia and the diffuse dimension by Trompenaars, which what we have experienced in our own country. Of course, it was easy for us to adapt to new workplace as we clearly knew what to expect. However, we have never been to the city before. Hofstede argues that Russia is a typical example of a high-power distance country, meaning that less powerful members of an organization expect and accept the fact that power is distributed unequally. From our experience, we can conclude that the higher power distance still exists between frontline employees and upper management, such as GM. However, in the property we worked for, middle managers had relatively low power distance in regards to employees they manage, and often they empowered us to make decisions. We could be assigned to perform a task independently and without constant control. By this, we can conclude that Russia is moving towards lower power distance at a workplace. When it comes to Trompenaars' theory of culture dimensions, he states that Russia is considered to be a country with a diffused culture. We can definitely prove this from our own work experience. Indeed, Russian people do not separate business and personal life from one another. We believe that good relationships between colleagues are greatly important for work to be done effectively. After work, all of us could go out together and even managers would not refuse to join us. I was lucky last year to get a contract for a cross-training position with an extreme sports resort located in Panama, and to be honest, I didn't know much about the mentality of Panamanians or how they behave at a workplace. From my first day of work, I discovered how similar I was with my colleagues at a hotel. I was surprised that being geographically so far from each other, Panama and Russia have so many things in common, and I cannot but agree with Hall that both of the countries are high context. The only challenge that I faced while working there would be being Panamanians too flexible with the time. Being an hour or even 2 hours late to work, meeting, or an appointment is not seen as something disrespectful or extraordinary in Panama, which refers to Trompenaars' attitude to time. Overall, I truly enjoyed working in Panama, and I believe that if I decide to open a business there one day, I would certainly be able to manage it by myself.
Stereotype 2. You can easily meet a bear in Russian streets. The common stereotype of having bears walking on the streets instead of dogs is completely false. Bears do perform in circuses around Russia, but the bear is one of the national symbols of our country. Owning a bear as a pet is crazy, even to Russian people. Well, we wish we could have one.
After having carefully analyzed and reflected on my past and present cultural experiences, I can assume what type of manager I'll become in my future career. As for my cultural weaknesses, I come from a country that is considered by Trompenaars as an emotional, and therefore it might create some difficulties and challenges with my colleagues and employees. And I need to learn to be more neutral and objective while resolving conflicts and problems. However, I consider my strength to be a fact that I'm a representative of a high-context culture described by Hall. In terms of association, I believe that how things get done depends on relationship with people, and it's important to pay attention to group process. And hospitality industry is where teamwork is commonly practiced in many properties. I believe that my leadership style will be people-oriented. Despite the fact that my culture has a high power distance, I realize how important is that to have a deep care for employees and treat them as individuals, and this is what I will practice during my professional life. Hospitality is an industry with high cultural diversity, Therefore, it's vital for us as a future hotel managers to identify, adapt and respect this variety of cultures. Indeed, a team comprised of people with different backgrounds will work more efficiently and may come up with better solutions. Ryan 2014 believes that managers must recognize that people are different and encourage them to show their individuality. Besides that, a manager or a business owner should motivate employees to work with others of different cultures, which will help them to learn more about communication style, talents and goals. Greenberg 2013 supports these arguments and also states that it's important to address any diversity-related issues in the workplace in order to resolve conflicts and create a pleasant working environment for everyone.
To summarize, in this video we have talked about our childhood and how it was like to grow up in Russia. After, we have reflected on our present personal and professional experiences and compared theories with what we have faced in real life. Lastly, we have mentioned the importance of managing cultural diversity in hospitality industry and identified strategies for dealing with issues associated with it.
Stereotype 3. Russians do not smile.